Alright, sorry about that. The video recorder that I use maxed out at 15 minutes, so I had to just start a new clip for us. So we just finished this slide, now we're moving on to our interactive discussion, where you'll see that we have had some responses in our polling already, and you'll see that they go along the lines of caring, smiling, high fives, being positive. Those are all great things that you can do to have those positive interactions with your students to ultimately be a good role model and to help their education. Now let's move on to the next principle of the humanistic approach in physical education, which is self-assessment. Take a look at these two pictures. What do you see? You see up here, this is what we see as teachers. You know, students got the thumbs up, they're smiling, they're like, yeah, I totally got this. And then when realistically, they look like this little kid here with their hands on their heads, and they're looking very much overwhelmed and confused. Now, self-assessment is one of the 4 principles, and there are many reasons why I believe that it is very important for the humanistic approach, but I'm just going to be limiting it to the one word, power. Then I'll start with Michael Volkott's concept of power knowledge, which plays a huge role in the student's ability to self-assess. We, as educators, must surrender some of our power to allow students an opportunity to maximize their learning. This relates to the humanistic approach because we now have students that have a say in their assessments. For decades, students would take in the information, study, take a test, and receive a score. That score most likely doesn't accurately reflect the knowledge gained for that student. His concept stated that if we surrender some of that power by the means of allowing students to take charge of their education, like Peter Hutton's choice, that they will ultimately show much more growth than before. Volkott did stress that power should not be completely given away, but only in situations when it is appropriate. So that power could be what is being learned, how it's being learned, and over what time period. So the second point we got here is that self-assessment has 2 major benefits for the humanistic approach: opportunities for students with different learning styles to express their knowledge gain, so like Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence theory, and quickly identify any gaps in the student learning. So just as mentioned in the choice section, Howard Gardner's theory on multiple intelligences is a major contributor to the humanistic approach. Allowing students who prefer a certain intelligence are given that power to assess their learning. Also, identifying gaps in their education is vital, especially at the younger levels in PE and in general ed classes. So here's an example of how we use self-assessment in PE. For each unit, we have 3 essential questions posted on the whiteboards throughout the unit. During the final days of that unit, the teacher calls one student at a time to come up and answer one of those questions. In addition to that one question, the teacher will ask something along the lines of, what grade do you think you deserve for this unit and why? I personally have found that this self-assessment strategy has been very effective in students who may not improve visually at a skill or sport, but have still gained knowledge through concepts and other principles of physical education that they could use for their lifetime. This is a great way to get to have conversations with those students you may not typically have interactions with, which is a key point of the humanistic approach, is to have those interactions and develop those positive relationships to enhance their confidence, motivation, and performance in your class. So over here you'll see my very neat handwriting of the questions that we will put on the whiteboard for our soccer unit. Relate how the drills prepare you to play in a competitive game. Analyze your skills. What skills are you doing good, bad, and why? How do you use communication in soccer? What is the difference between good teamwork and bad teamwork? So those are some questions that I would ask. And I know what you're thinking. Some of these answers are really easy, but of course we think they're easy. We're PE teachers. For some students who struggle with relating these questions to the sport of soccer, this gives them a good chance for them to express their learning and self-assess themselves on their performance. And at this point here, you would have another interactive discussion where it says, do you believe in self-assessment is necessary in PE? If so, how often? I tried to vote for myself through using my phone. Obviously, I only get 1 vote, so I clicked on A. But open discussion to any of these ones that you would see here. I would prefer at the beginning and end of a unit or at the end of a unit. Yes, every day could be pretty tricky, and you definitely don't want to have a say, and hopefully none of you are at, you don't even know what I'm talking about right now. Let's move on to the next and final principle of the humanistic approach in PE class. There we go. Most of us coach. We help guide our players to reach their potential during their sports season. Why can't we do this in our PE classroom? For decades, PE teachers have been the dominant source of information on a sport or skill. With the help of technology and other outlets, we are slowly becoming better facilitators to learning. Remember that with the humanistic approach, we are providing a framework to which students grow from, not pigeonholing them into a spot that they are not. So the one theorist is Pablo Freire, stated that teachers should guide students in their learning and should not be the central source of their information. This theory is coined the pedagogy of the oppressed from the late 60s and early 70s. The traditional teaching method was still in play, where teachers are lecturing students and students are simply believing and absorbing and accepting that information, that everything the teacher says. This was called the banking concept of education, as the students were piggy banks and the educators were putting the information into their brains. Freire's theory was that the educational system was causing more harm than good. Freire didn't want students to be simply molded by the teachers. They wanted them to learn from themselves. Instead of the teacher being the main source of information, as stated in the slide, Freire desired students and learners to form their own education, with the teacher/educator guide them through the process. Just look at the picture up at the top. Just as water is the only condition for growth in a plant, we as teachers can not only be the means of the student's education. So I thought that was a pretty cool picture right there. And then we got Vygotsky's stated that teachers should assist students to bridge the gap between what students can and cannot do. That area is called the zone of proximal development, or ZPD. This relates to the humanistic approach because teachers are not dragging students to some goal. The teacher is having interactions with their students to have them reach their goal previously not to believe that they would achieve. Then here's that bottom photo right there. This coach is helping players get better at their dribbling of basketball. The coach is facilitating learning by demonstrating and most likely using verbal cues to assist them in a zone that the players might not have thought they could have been in before. So here's how teachers are facilitators in PE, or alternative ways that you could be a facilitator. You could reach out of the school to have others teach a skill or activity. You could allow student demonstrators. You can provide technology to assist students' understandings through heart rate monitors, iPads, and more. Or locate organizations outside of the school that students may want to get involved with, like the Wheaton Sports Center. Freire's point of not having teachers be the sole source of information is shown here in reaching outside of school to have other professionals come in to help the students. I have had spike ball pros come in and show the game. I have had Northwestern football players come in and teach a few football skills, and all those have increased the students' motivation, engagement, and overall enjoyment in the class. Technology in PE is a great way to expand the ZPD of the students' understanding. Heart rate monitors help students understand how different activities affect their heart rate and ultimately increase their ZPD of understanding of health-related fitness activities. And here we would have another poll. The poll reads, in what ways are you the facilitator in your classroom? How would you guide them in your learning? And then when we would get responses, we would then go over and try to relate them back to Paulo's or Vygotsky's if possible. Let's go to this next slide. All right. I hope you've all packed your popcorn. It's movie time. Before I get started with the clip, let's at least see what's written over here. You know the four main principles and how they are applied to PE. Yay. Let's put those into practice by watching a movie. Remember, the four are choice, emotional learning, self-assessment, and teacher is the facilitator. After this 90-second clip, you'll see how this teacher does or does not use the four principles of the humanistic approach of education. This is from the show Supernatural. Alright, so hopefully you enjoyed that video here. I'm going to now shrink this away. There we go. Let's get back to this presentation. So then we'll open up a little discussion to see how Mr. Dean was not making a very good decision of using the humanistic approach in PE. He offered no choice. All the kids were having to play dodgeball. He clearly had all the power with all the students looking very scared and even throwing the ball at one of the students. And he was not really a facilitator because he just threw the balls out there and let them just simply play. So let's move on to our conclusion. So let's revisit our vision and mission statements. So hopefully you remembered at the beginning of the presentation we went over this. Just like any PE lesson, it needs to have a purpose. I didn't just post our vision and mission statements at the beginning for nothing. Let's take a look at all this colorful chart. So let's go look at our vision statement. Empowering students to develop healthy habits and instill physical literacy and becoming lifelong participants in physical activity. Mission statement. Monroe Middle School's PE department is to provide a framework for instruction to students encompassing building respect and instilling self-esteem. With a focus on overall well-being of the whole child through lifelong physical activities, our mission is to help students make good choices in their health and wellness. So let's see what we have here. Did we have choice? Yep. Help students make good decisions with their physical health and wellness. Students are asked to make good decisions. Emotional learning or SEL? You betcha. Building respect and instilling self-esteem. Providing that positive learning environment. How about self-assessment? There it is. Empower students to develop healthy habits, instilling fitness literacy, the ability to apply it in a multitude of ways. Finally, teacher as a facilitator. Look there in the red. Provide a framework of instruction. We set the foundation, allow the students to build, and are there with our white helmets making sure that the building is structurally sound. That concludes the presentation on the humanistic approach in PE at Monroe. Any questions? Well, if you're driving home this afternoon and any ideas pop in your head, drop me an email at daniel.lalondejr@cusd.org. Have a great afternoon. Thank you for your time.